Hi, I'm Sed. I am a content creator, content marketer, content strategist, but I also am a dad blogger at daddy.co.ke, and I am a father. That's the thing. That's what I was forgetting. I'm a father.
My name is Bongera. I am a dad, a husband, I'm an entrepreneur. I run a company that does market research. I'm here to learn and also share what I think about it.
Hi, I'm Lee. I'm just a creative guy and a dad and experiencer of life. So let's do this thing.
My name is Marcus Olang. I am a writer and photographer, Stills by Marcus, and me conversations galore happen.
What are your views about contraceptives?
Contracept out of shit. I think very important discussion to be had from a young age. As much information needs to be given to young people about it and the importance of it and the consequences of not. And I'm not saying kids are consequences. Mm-hmm. They're actually blessings, but you have to plan your life. Mm-hmm. And contraceptives will help you plan your life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my reaction. Mm-hmm. Also, if you have many children like I do, at this point you need to start thinking about a permanent contraceptive.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so yeah. It's important.
What does that mean for you?
For me?
Yes.
It's just sacrificing the ability to create more children because 4 is enough.
Are you thinking about getting a snip?
Definitely.
Okay.
In the very near future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Let me know if you want to talk about it.
Have you gone through it? So have I, actually.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
Sorry. Missed that.
Yeah.
Now that we're on that, yes.
No, I'm a huge believer in like planning. Yeah. So generally, know your options. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to kind of not just have access to the information, but to really digest it. Mm-hmm. I think one thing we've learned through COVID is everybody does their research even when they're not doing any research. Yeah. So I feel like contraceptives are very similar in that everybody knows, but nobody knows. Mm-hmm. So take the time to kind of know and apply. Mm-hmm. Don't just think about it and be like, oh, don't know if I want kids, and then just still go around depositing samples across Nairobi. Mm-hmm. There has to be like intention behind information, and yeah, that my view is generally that align your knowledge and your action.
For your particular case,
yeah,
was there a point in time at which that thought shifted, or has this always been part of the plan that at some point you would get the snip?
That's an interesting question. Mm-hmm. So, backtrack a little bit. I never wanted kids when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So there's a degree to which everything that's happened has been a little bit of an evolution of how I've matured over time. Because as we progressed into the marriage, that's kind of how we ended up with our first child and decided this is what we want to do, and that's how we ended up with the second child and said this is something we really want. Mm-hmm. And then at that point it was like very clear, like, yeah, we're done. We balanced it out. Our house is like a good split down the middle. Yeah, it's like a nice little bilateral, 2 adults and 2 children and 2 pets. We are good. Yeah, it's nice and even. But we had discussed it like immediately. We had my son. That was like the immediate discussion after that was when we are done, then we need to look at what options we're looking at. And I was immediately, I'm not going to. I think there's a certain risk involved in all contraceptives that are targeted at women, and there's a certain ease to getting a vasectomy that, for some reason, a lot of men struggle with. Because I said this on my page, but like you can do it over your lunch break and nobody would know. You can't say that about getting your tubes tied. You can't say that about, there's nothing that happens for women that's permanent, that's not massively invasive and massively dangerous. Mm-hmm. So Yeah, I think it was a fairly straightforward thought for me. That said, if you're a believer in prophylactics or whatever else you want to go for, your choice. If you really don't want to have someone just down there for like 20 minutes, your choice. But if you're being kind of serious about it, and this is something that really means something to you, you know, weigh the options. And now we're like super happy as parents. Like my wife's entire livelihood is around kids and like doing play education. Part of my thing is just creating content as a father. Like this is part of our lives in a significant way. So I'm not, yeah, I think it's when you get to a certain stage when you're sure. So it's not like if you're weighing it out, weigh it out. If you're sure,
You do
then
the
go
thing.
into it.
On that note,
Yeah. So my thoughts on contraceptive,
Yes.
that they are critical. I think it's a conversation, and I'm speaking within the context of like a marriage or a committed relationship. I mean, there's a whole conversation around that before that happens, but within a committed relationship, it's a conversation, something you have to sort of agree. I think just like you said, it's very invasive for the woman. Like a TL for a woman is just surgery, it's days of recovery. But a vasectomy is I had mine done several years ago, about 5-6 years ago now, and it was an in and out thing, half an hour and I was done. The recovery kicks your ass a bit, but it's quick. The process itself is pretty straightforward. And it was a conversation and a decision that we made as a couple. But I think it's something that society, and especially a lot of men, feel that contraception is the woman's job. That it's up to you to protect yourself from getting pregnant from me, which I think is a very skewed way of looking at it. It's both ways. I think men also have a say and, in fact, a responsibility to consider the options where contraception is concerned. I think the permanence of a vasectomy means that you have to be kind of sure of yourself before you do it. They say it can be reversed, I hear, but it's a process. It's expensive. It's a 50-50 Hail Mary thing, but it's pretty much a permanent thing, and it's very effective as a contraceptive. But I think it's a conversation. I think for me, contraception is a decision that's made by a couple. It's not one person who has to protect themselves from the other, in my view.
Okay. I think just on that, the point of reversibility, it's one of reversibility should not like be a guiding choice. It's kind of like you can get divorced, but that's not why you get married. Yeah.
True.
It shouldn't be I'm going in because divorce is an option, or I'm going in because reversal is an option.
Yeah.
Go in because you intend to go
It's
in.
the right thing to do.
Exactly.
I had a conversation with somebody online once, and they were saying that they wouldn't do a vasectomy because what happens if my wife dies or if we break up and now my next wife wants kids? What's going to happen then? Yeah, that was my reaction also. I was like, I mean, you're planning for an eventuality which might never happen, number one, and that's the future. This is now.
Yes.
What's the value of doing this here and now?
Yeah.
You're thinking about something that might not happen.
Let me tell you, privilege is having the choice to roll imaginary dice.
Wow.
Guys, I smoked a lot of weed. I'm joking. I have not. I'm sorry.
Another question.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you challenge gender stereotypes at home or every day in your life? Whoa. I'll start with you, Morgan.
You just had to. Okay. That's a very interesting question because it's something that I've really debated a lot as a parent. And for me, the gender stereotype comes about when looking at how I raise my son versus how I raise my daughters. What are some of the things that I would allow my son to do, or I would consider weird if my son did, or if my daughter did? And for me, the gender stereotype is very real for me at that level, because society has put us in a place where boys are supposed to do certain things, girls can't do certain things, and I feel like I need to break that. I need to stop that whole thing. But it's not that simple because there's a whole other group of people who have a different view on this issue. So I've kind of struggled with that, and I've had to ask myself, what is the problem, or how should I guide my kids to gravitate towards the things that they're interested in naturally, and not put them in this box that I'm in, where I feel that boys shouldn't play with dolls or girls shouldn't play with cars or certain things that guys should do, girls shouldn't do. Those are my stereotypes that I shouldn't be projecting those onto my kids. And society has put them in a box already. What can I do to free them from that and allow them to be naturally interested in things that they're naturally interested in? I mean, if my daughter wants to play soccer and is interested in soccer, why not? You know, I still feel weird. Like, it's cringy when I say this, but if my son wants to do something that is along the lines that people would consider feminine, I mean, why not? Who said that those things have to be in that way? Why can't we let kids sort of evolve and gravitate towards the things that they're naturally interested in? That said, we still have a responsibility as parents, in my opinion, to sort of guide them and give them sort of clarity around what it is that they can be. Because I don't think that kids naturally just know what the right or the wrong thing to do is. I think we have a role to play. And part of that is also the gender question. So I don't know if I have a full answer to that. I know it's something that I'm debating with in my role as a parent, and one that I'm really trying to grapple with so that I don't put my kids in the same boxes that I am in or my wife is in. You know, let's break the box. It doesn't have to be that way. Why can't we just shake this thing up and let people be who they are?
Yeah. Lee?
So many things. If you asked me this 10 years ago, my answer would have been different. But knowing what I know now, I completely agree with you. Kids need to be kids, number one, right? They need to be free. They need to enjoy the things that they enjoy, right? And you can't force stereotypes. In many cases, stereotypes are wrong, right? When you're told that this girl is too boyish or this boy is too girlish, that's first of all, fuck your opinion, okay? This is an individual going through their own human experience, okay?
Amen.
But what I believe is, it's like, a long time ago, I told my aunts, thanks for coming every Sunday to pick me up to go to church, but we can stop now. I was 7 years old when I said that. And it was a shock to them, but my parents didn't have an issue with it. And, here I am today with my vulgar language. But the thing is, your children need to, apart from guiding them, because I think we can guide kids and we can sort of, when we say guide, it's like we're going to give them a certain amount of information that we prefer so that they follow a certain channel of growth, right? Whereas the more information we give them, the more we tell them there are these types of people in the world, there is this sort of fear in the world, there's this sort of good in the world, then they get as much info to be their own individuals, right? To decide that there's a little boy in America who I just watched a short video of. He never wears the same socks. He'll wear one yellow one and one with stripes, and he doesn't give a fuck. And that is what I think, proper guidance is for him to know that this is what people do, this is what society does, and you can be you within this society. So the society also kind of needs to embrace change. And something I heard yesterday is that culture should not create you. You create the culture. Society can change.
Interesting.
Something you said. So I agree with everything they're saying. But there's something in the question which was, do you feel like you challenge? I think you mentioned something around that. And I know I strongly believe in pretty much every form of deconstruction of masculinity and the definitions of patriarchy that are there. I feel like all those things just need to be tossed, and let's start from draft one. But then the do you feel like you challenge just made me think of something. So we'd gone somewhere, I don't remember where, but like there was a buffet, and there was some guys who were laying out food, cakes, and my son went to get a cake, and they had like a bunch of different ones with different colors on them, and he went for the pink one, and the guy serving the cakes went, no, you take the blue one because you're a boy. Now here's the thing, the question was, do you feel like you challenge? My wife's immediate reaction was to challenge him and say, you can't say that. He takes what he wants because he's a person. And she was really like immediate and eloquent and to the point about it. And then she just looked at me like,
Right.
this was when you were supposed to
Back
say
me up,
something.
man.
Now, in my head, what I thought was, and he, like, I'll just return the cake and be like, have the conversation with my son. But then what she said, which, you know, has stuck with me since then, is if you don't do it there, if you don't correct someone else doing it while it's happening, what he's going to internalize is that sometimes it's okay. So it has to be in that moment. And the question around, do you challenge these norms on a day-to-day basis? My answer is I try to. Like, I don't think like I do all the time. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm here. It's like, I know you guys already did this question, but if I was asked, am I a feminist? I want to be. I try to be. I don't think that we've gotten to a point where we can completely change from what we've been doing, especially for those of us who are like, I'm not going to say I'm old. I don't want people to age me. I'm wearing sneakers. I'm young.
Cool. Cool
But
sneakers.
thank you. Yeah, Jordan 4s. So,
Come
I think, especially if you've lived the majority of your life before the Me Too era, and then you get to this point where there's a awakening and there's like all these changes happening, you have to do a lot of reckoning, a lot of unlearning. And you know, just to be fair, like what you said, a lot of what you learn is in those younger years, in those formative years. We've all been through a toxic formative stage. We don't undo that by being woke in our 30s. And I don't think it changes a lot in terms of like how you parent until until you've been through it for a little while. So yeah, I try to practice is my answer.
Still down the line of you know, challenging stereotypes every day in the context of your home environment. Let's go down to the dynamic between you and your partner. How far do you feel you go in terms of challenging both the stereotypes and what you think within those spaces? Does that make sense?
It's like the norms.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if that it's even fair to have this conversation without her. I mean, so that we sort of debate it. But I think for me, I've gone through a lot of can I say that awakening? I guess deconstruction in the last couple of years around this gender question. And not just gender, but even just relationship issues and all. So we've been married for a certain period of time. Things start to change, and so you really have to adjust. There's a lot of adjustment that happens at a certain point. But I think that, and I can speak for myself. I can't speak for her. But I think I've interacted with a lot of information, a lot of content that I've tried to internalize, and I'm trying to use it to do things differently. Yeah. I guess someone else would have to tell me whether it's working or not. But I think I'm trying as much as I can to deconstruct some of these gender boxes that I see. And I think part of it is just seeing the boxes and just recognizing that's not right. That shouldn't be right. I shouldn't have to pigeonhole my son into a box that this is what boys do. And previously that was never an issue. But I think just being in spaces like this has opened up my eyes to see some of the prejudices that I've had as a dad over the years. And, you know, I'm grateful. I thank God that it's not too late. My kids are still a little young, so I can still try and undo what I've done, the damage I've done, if I've done any. But I think it's a personal journey. I can't honestly tell you that we've had this conversation with my wife that, you know, what is your prejudice? And we've never had that conversation, and maybe we should. But it's really just a personal thing. And I think I've learned a lot. I think there's still a long way to go in terms of deconstructing the box that I'm in. But the first step for me has been just seeing and realizing that I'm actually in a box psychologically around these gender issues, and I need to figure my way around it.
There's a lot of things he said that have made me think. In terms of like the boxes that are there, to the last point that you mentioned, I have had that conversation with my wife. We've actually had it a few times, and I think with each conversation, first of all, they're uncomfortable conversations. So just brace yourself when you do decide to venture down that path. You realize that there are a lot of things that you take for granted. I think one of the big realizations for me was that intention and actions are just like, hopes and realities. You can have this vision in your mind, you want a Range Rover, but let's be real. You're still in a mat. You're still Mitsubishi. You're still where you are, right? So like you need to be able to kind of realign and recenter. And if you're willing to take that, because in my case, I feel like I behave or I change better when I have the harsh reality in mind. Having those conversations really helped to kind of figure out things I was taking for granted. Because I didn't realize this, but one, anyone who knows me, I'm a bit of a workaholic. So in my mind, especially when my son was going to be born, what that meant for me is I need to work harder. And I went straight into like perpetuating stereotypes that I didn't even consider. I never went and considered that if I'm going to be away more, then I'm leaving a lot of the housework alone. I'm not involved at all in home management whatsoever. I'm not aware what's happening there because I'm busy trying to like chase down checks and make sure that I sort out education and funding and things like this, without thinking that, where she needs help is my presence, where she needs help is, here. And then realizing that me saying where she needs help is also a point of privilege. You're not helping, you're a parent in this situation as well.
It's your role.
If anything, what you realize is that the dynamics are completely shifted. I said this to someone the other day and they took offense, but thankfully this is a safe space, I'm assuming. Amina told me before I came in.
Say it first, then we'll decide whether it's a safe thing or not.
No, we said it was
Okay.
safe. There's
You are
cushioning
safe.
everywhere. But I said this to someone the other day because they're about to have a kid, and I told them, you have to keep in mind, you have done nothing. This woman has manufactured a human being from nothing. You have spectated. You should be doing everything else. Not some, everything. There are things that do not require her at all. If you're not taking them on, what are you doing? If she's shopping for the kid, why aren't you? Are you unable to shop? Is it that you don't know how to browse Amazon? What is your reason for not doing these things? And what it always turns out to be is those things, oh yeah, but
Stereotypes.
yeah. You end up finding that small things that you took for granted, so many little small things, you could just take on. And for me, that was like, it's been a learning process where, you start doing them and then you pat yourself on the back and then you have another conversation and you realize you still have more unlearning to do. You still have more processing to do. So similar to the answer to the other thing, I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying. It's just intention, right? It's like, it's an evolution. It's a big ship to turn. This isn't going to be like a hairpin handbrake turn. This is going to be a very slow ship turning, very, very wide radius before we go the right way. And hopefully we get there before my son is old enough to be able to like
Call you out and to challenge you on some of these things.
I feel like he'll get there before me because he's already set in the right direction. I need to catch up to him. Yeah. Before his vocabulary gets to a point where he calls me toxic. I'll need that in my life. Yeah.
Those are fantastic answers, guys, by the way.
Thank you.
What, right now, and over the past many years, probably over 5 years, 6 years, I've been in a state of learning and unlearning. Okay? So I've been changing and growing my perspective. And what I've come to realize is that people are different, right? The way they view things, the way they think about things, the way they process things are different. And when you're a parent, there's no grand plan of how it'll all work out, how it'll all play out. So you do your best on a case-by-case, day-by-day sort of thing. And now the thing is, two parents have different perspectives. So there comes a time where you have a conversation and you agree to use one way to handle matters or to deal with things. And you take a step back and you support your partner in that, right? And both the mothers of my children have their own different ways of how they want to raise their kids, how they want to teach their kids. And to be quite frank, I support both. And only where I think that a different perspective is needed is where I speak up and say, hey, listen, maybe you should consider this, right? And if we can try it and see if it works or not, well and good. If not, I usually, and it comes off as being passive, but I really respect the role of a mom, right? And what their perspective is in how they want to raise their kids. So I do my best to support that, but at the same time, based on what I'm learning and the things that where my mind is at in terms of what I want for their future, then I'll speak up. You know, so it's a balance, you know, and you still have to be partners in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does support look like in the everyday? Because life often happens in the most mundane of things. In fact,
Yeah.
the mundane is what life is. What does that support look like in the everyday?
You know, one of the things that I think is super important is that open communication, no matter what. Yeah, good, bad, painful, just communicate. But like I said earlier, life is just about things that need to get done, that need to happen. And if you're partners, you're cool if your partner does this and I do that, right? So you run with this, I run with that. Tukutane mbele, we agree on what needs to be done next, and we keep moving. So it's a mutual thing. Yeah, it's not about a dad should carry 90% of the family and the mom should carry 10% because of whatever reason, right? It's more about being considerate and actually actively supporting each other. Yeah.
May I dig?
Yes, please.
And where I am going into a territory that's not allowed, please
Yes.
tell me.
Go ahead.
So in the context of now, for instance, in this conversation so far, one partner, multiple partner, in terms of the parenting.
Yes.
How does that? I feel like it's a delicate balancing game. Is it?
No, it's just a balancing game.
Okay.
Yeah. It only becomes delicate when things get emotional or you collide in terms of perspectives. Yeah. But like I said, I keep things very simple. Yeah. Children need to eat. Children need to go to school. You know, you need to spend quality time. Yeah, it's quite simple for me. But that's because it's my perspective.
Okay.
On the flip side, the ladies might have different things to say. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like this conversation should happen with the partners as well.
Yeah.
At some
yeah.
point.
I want to say something, an experience that I had, just also to highlight what you're saying, and part of what you're saying as well. So this, on my wedding night, I got married. We've gone through the whole thing. Go for the evening party. So just before we walk in, my wife gives me a handbag to hold for her so she can go to the ladies, all right? And at that moment, my uncles come into the hotel, right? And my uncles are just wild, rowdy, no filters kind of guys, and they saw that and they just burst out laughing, and they're like, "Boss, why are you carrying your wife's handbag? Kwani umeoa ama umeolewa?" You know, to say, you know, are you married or have you been married by someone? Yeah. And that thing had such a profound impact on me because from that point on, going forward, and it's still, until today, it's still sometimes an issue. Like, you know, why am I the one doing this sort of thing? And I realized that, you know, and it's part of the whole deconstruction that's been happening recently. And just realizing that is a moment in time in my life which defined a lot about how I see the gender relationship. And I see myself as somebody who is there to fulfill a certain role, but the handbag is for the woman. So you carry Baba handbag, you do these other things. And I had to deconstruct that because it's not really healthy. And it's not even true. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, that it was a very unique, very specific instance that happened. And I recognize that now, that's something that really put me in a box, which is, it's unfortunate.
Is that then something of an indictment on our sensitivities? We were having this discussion at some point earlier on, and we alluded to it right before all this began. We alluded to it, and it was, I think I was having it with you actually, where we talked about how sensitive men actually are, but we hide behind. It's actually, I feel like it's a glass pane that we pretend is indestructible, but just a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, man, masculinity is fragile. as F. I'm not sure what the sensory
I feel like it's
protocols are here. Yeah, he
Well,
he was colourful. So
He was quite colourful.
But
And also, in case of anything, edit suite exists. We will fix it
by
in
the
post.
editing suite, yeah, because I think my mom-in-law will watch this. But no, I think masculinity is like extremely fragile. So what you're saying is 100% true. In fact, this whole idea of like just certain actions being perceived a certain way. In my case, thankfully, I grew up with thankfully, I don't know. I guess thankfully, I grew up with only my mom. I carried handbags from when I was like small. I've built up all the, retorts to anybody telling you don't carry that. Yeah, just like
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
There's really
'cause-
nothing wrong with
Essentially,
it.
there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it.
I think the only thing that's the biggest problem is like in principle I don't think anybody in principle has an issue with it. The issue is when somebody approaches you and says, "Did you marry or did you get married?" Someone comes and says, "Oh, so the minute your manhood is challenged."
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Doing it is not. I don't think so. I mean, I know there are people who preemptively will feel a certain way, and that's just because you can be challenged. You don't want to put yourself in that position. And again, that just goes to the sensitivity of manhood. You have to just always remember that the symbol for manhood is balls, and you could graze those things, and people will fall. Yeah, that is a perfect analogy of just how fragile masculinity is. Yeah. So
A whiff of wind.
I'm telling you, Bana, it's just the wrong breeze as you're walking down the road. The guy is on his knees.
Yes.
That's just all it is. Someone just needs to look at you funny while you're carrying the handbag, and you'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to process it. We've not been dealt, like those cards were never dealt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Then on that note, and this tied to another question that's here, on the idea of then of these sensitivities that we have as men and having our masculinity challenge, how does that then translate to being a girl dad? Because being a girl dad is,
we all have girls, yeah.
I believe so, yes?
Oh, that's
yes,
cool.
yes, except me.
I'm touting it so proudly. I have neither a girl nor a boy. I have a dog.
Is it a male or a female?
Well, male soon to adopt a female.
You don't have to answer.
Yes,
It's okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because and again, this is me speaking from an outside observer, watching what I have seen of others. Being the father of a girl is different to being the father of a boy. It implies certain, in the current construct, and that's a construct that I recognize needs to change. But currently, being the father of a girl means that girl will challenge everything that you believe in as a man, I think. But that's what I think. What is it like being the father of a girl? What's it like being a girl dad?
I hope they fucking challenge me and whatever the fuck I spew at them in terms of guidance or leadership or fatherhood. Because, like I said, I'm in a constant state of learning. Because if you're questioned or challenged, depending on how you look at it, it's an opportunity to learn and for all involved parties to get better. You get? And I've come to learn over the course of my reconstruction or deconstruction is that you can't give a fuck about what everyone thinks or says, right? So if we're playing fake teacups, we're playing fake teacups, right? If she's wearing a tutu and says, "Dad, let's do some ballet right now," in the middle of Carrefour, we're going to be spinning all over the place. And I really don't give a shit what other people perceive of me or us, because I'm raising a human being who I want to know that it's okay. You are allowed to express yourself and you're allowed to be, right? So I think that's the thing. I think in fact, with the support of the moms, we're going to raise some outspoken and outstanding young ladies. Yeah. So that's it.
I find that some of the challenges around, my daughter and how we interact are coming up now. It wasn't so much of an issue earlier. There were just 3 kids, and they're different ages. But I find that the issues are becoming more gender specific the older they get. At least that's been my experience. Before that, they're just 3 kids. And one of the things that's happening is we're having conversations with my daughter about the world, about the reality of life, right? And it's unfortunate we have to have these conversations, but the reality is that there are certain places where she would be in harm's way. There are certain things that she or certain interactions that she would have that she has to be careful about. These are things I would never tell my son, or my son wouldn't really be bothered with. But because of how the world is built and all this conversation we just had about male privilege and gender inequality, the truth is that my daughter is going into a world, or she's growing up into a world where these things are real. And we want to be realistic about it. We want to be idealistic as well and say that this is not how things should be, but this is how they are. And so, certain conversations, certain people, certain places, you have to look out for people who might be out to harm you or something of the sort. So there's all these conversations that we're having, which to me, they bring out the whole hypocrisy of the system, because why should I have these conversations with her and not with my son? Well, that's just the way it is. I think it's some of the challenges that we have are not really ideological. It's more about rules. Like, why should I be stopped from doing 1, 2, 3 or something of the sort? Why is it okay for her brother to do this and not okay for me? So those kind of things. The conversations can be very uncomfortable. At least that's been my experience.
And we've got to have those conversations with our sons. Yeah. They need to have all the data and all the statistics and stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do. And these things are not comfortable. I think being challenged as a man is never something you want to do. It in your mind, at least for me, it questions, or it brings to question my capability as a man. If I'm being shown up or being asked hard questions, then what does that say about me and what I've believed and what I've done and how I've lived my life the last so many years? So the conversations they can be uncomfortable. By my own personality and my character, I don't like being in spaces like those. And that's something I'm working on. I need to be more open to those kind of things. But my experience of parenting is that I'm growing just as much as my kids are. And these conversations that we're having with them are things I've never had with anyone before. And so I'm learning as well. And it's also been a sort of like a joint thing, but it's not comfortable. I can tell you that. What you're saying about telling our sons as well, it's a thing. It doesn't come naturally to have these conversations with your son, but it's something that has to happen, because our sons are the perpetrators of these things, this gender-based violence and all of this stuff. Our daughters are going to be in harm's way because somebody's son wasn't taught or shown that this is not the way to behave. So our sons need to be different. Our sons need to be better, and we have to have these conversations.
I remember before we had my son, when we just found out, like, my wife was pregnant, my first thought was, what if it's a girl? Yeah, okay, I'm judging by the loud smiles that was a thing. Because, like, I remember thinking, at the time, I don't remember who it was who I was talking to, was telling me that they were just in, like, and I'm sure, like, all the women in the room off camera relate to this. They just told me that they were just in a matatu for, like, the third time today. They were groped by a random person. And in my head, I was just thinking, third time today. Like, I can't tell you I have been groped in a matatu in my life. Well, once. But third time today.
This one day, that is not it over.
Yeah, no, she was telling me at like 11 a.m. And in my head, I'm just thinking, what if it's a girl? What if she's in a mat? And there are 14 other people there. And of those 14 people, 13 are guys. All these thoughts just started going through. I wrote about it at length elsewhere. But then obviously now, it was a boy, and then I had some time to reconcile. But what that kind of did was it immediately made me start thinking about the problem. I realized the problem isn't how I raise her, it's how I raise him. That's where the issue is. The problem, the trying to figure out this whole idea of how do I be the closest to the feminist aspiration that I want to have, is how do I carry on the legacy of all the strong women before me, is in how I raise my son, not how I raise my daughter. So even before we had a girl, my thought was there. By the time we had a girl, all I was thinking is that, like, first thing I thought was buy guns. I talk about that elsewhere. But
and hire dogs and Mossad and all those things.
let me tell you, have you ever Googled whether you can teach kids self-defense? like babies. I had a whole like.
You
I
know,
went-
it's crazy
you went
because
down a path, eh?
it's
Yeah,
the
you
first
did,
thing I taught my girls,
Yeah.
how to punch and where to punch. Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's
All
like
three.
I remember thinking this and then just going, "Why am I doing this? Like I don't want to teach her fear."
It shouldn't have to get to that.
Yeah. So I told myself point blank, I'm not, whatever I teach her, I will not teach her fear because it's not her job. Like we need I think the change happens when we live in the reality we want to live in. And the reality I want to live in is that the next generation, the burden of change is on the men. Women have done enough. Like this feminist thing, they've pushed that movement. This is not my daughter's job. It's been done. My mom did it. My wife is doing it. Everyone who's behind UnMothering is doing it. This should not be my daughter's job. My daughter's is to be the most fearless, just awesome person she can be without this burden. She should be aware of it, obviously. But if there's anything I can give her in the first few years, I'm just giving her fearlessness.
Yeah.
Yeah, let her go out there just like, yeah, and know that she's stronger than whatever else is out there. And then add the layers of these are the things that are going to need to change, but they will change. I need her to know things will change. And then I need to put that pressure on my son, like, you need to change this shit. Like, this is on you.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is, by the way.
Speak of the
Yeah,
angel.
speak of the angel, and he's coming to Nini.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
A lot of that. I like to go home.
You want to go home?
He wants to go home.
The faces.
You're wondering how
wonderful.
we're all.
Such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can handle this in bursts. By way of closing, and early on we had mentioned this. I think it's only you said that would very much like to hear from. If there is one thing, one unmoving, immutable truth that, in the context of this conversation, from ranging from equality to raising children within a more friendly dynamic, I use that very loosely, all across the conversation, what would be your one immutable truth?
That we need to be honest, especially with ourselves. No, I'm not explaining. I'm stopping there so I sound
Okay.
deep. I'm joking. No, but I think honesty is one of those things that that involves introspection, it involves information, and it involves inquisition. So you have to actually get someone to query, your identity, query your truths, query what you believe. You have to do it yourself. You have to think about it, and then you have to come out with, this is what my truth is. And then you have to, find a way to communicate it. Because honesty doesn't exist without communication. So to some degree, that means being vocal and speaking out to the world, but sometimes that also means speaking to yourself, whether you do that in prayer or meditation or mantras or however. And sometimes it also means just speaking to your children, speaking to your spouse and your partner, speaking to your family and telling them, need you to cut that shit out when you're talking to my kids. But speak your truth, and your truth comes from just being honest. So, yeah, that would be my immutable. Yeah, that one doesn't shift.
Listen, it's been a great conversation, and the willingness to have it is something that I, for one, don't take for granted, and I don't think it's something that should be taken for granted. The different areas that we've gone into, some I know will spark quite a bit of debate, some may draw a bit of mockery. All that is fine, it's part of the cycle of the conversation. I will recognize the conscious courage and decision that it takes to have these conversations. They have been happening amongst women, and the women who have been giving them for a while. That does not reduce in any way the efforts that have happened thus far. But for having shown up, thank you. And also, if I may extend a little challenge, I think it would be for us to never shut up. I mean, okay, no. Correction. I'm correcting this in real time. Know when to shut up and know when to talk. Yes.
When to shut up and when to speak up.
Yes, yeah. But thank you. I hope we carry this conversation forward. There are so many other questions that we haven't. There's not enough time to get into them. But I'm hoping that at some point, even as interactions are happening on the UnMothering the Woman platforms and engaging us as well, that some of those questions are things that we can dive into as time goes along. As we've talked about repeatedly, it's an ongoing conversation. One that my genuine hope is that it'll shift where minds are for the better.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Amen.